Hello, my name is Nicolette, and the current issue article I chose is an article about how the pandemic has sparked a new norm in education, and that is for parents to be choosing to homeschool their children instead of sending them to a public school education. Background information about the article I chose. The article discussed how even though the pandemic disrupted family life back in early March, one good thing came from it, and that is that parents are now choosing to opt for homeschool, even though many schools this upcoming year are returning to full in-person schooling. So the article talked about how during the past school year, many families decided to try out homeschooling as just a temporary basis, but they found that they actually enjoyed it more because they didn't have to worry about masks, the hybrid instruction, or any other regulations being imposed on the public schools. And many parents saw the benefits of homeschooling this past year, so they are choosing to continue with it through the upcoming school year. Through homeschooling, parents are able to tailor the curriculum to what they believe is best for their children. So whether this is tailoring the curriculum based on their child's interests or just for other reasons, but such as special needs, they find that it was easier to teach for those distinctive needs. And lastly, many families experienced difficulties during the pandemic because many of them had lack of internet access, so it limited their child's ability to benefit from the virtual learning. So some statistics that the article shared was that back in March, the U.S. Census Bureau reported that in March about 5.4% of children were being homeschooled, and now in September it will be about 11% being homeschooled. And in some low-income communities, it reported that in March, about 3.3% of students were being homeschooled, and now going into September, it is about 16.1%. So you can see that there has been an influx in families choosing for their children to be homeschooled instead of returning to the public school setting. I related this new change in education to two philosophers that we've discussed, the first being John Locke. And a quote from John Locke is, he said, "The well-educating of their children is so much the duty and concern of parents, and the welfare and prosperity of the nation so much depends on it, I would have everyone lay it seriously to heart." Based on what we read about John Locke, I presumed that he would agree with the concept of homeschooling because he believed that the role of the parents in education was very important and vital, and he believed that the family had more rights to education than society was letting on. And Locke argued that paternal power exists for a different purpose than political power, and the power of parents over children is limited to the purpose of families, the proper care and raising of offspring. So Locke is arguing the importance of parents and that they have more power over raising their children than they do political power. And I said that Locke would favor education at home because it would be either the parents educating their own children, or the parents could choose a tutor to teach their children. So again, the parents have the primary responsibility of their children's education. And Locke also believed the education of children was primarily a right and duty of parents rather than of state. So I think Locke would agree that homeschooling would be the better choice because the parents would be able to dictate what their children learned and ultimately have them use reason to be good citizens of society. But again, I don't think Locke would approve of children being in a educational setting that was run by the government, so therefore I think he would actually promote the idea of homeschooling. The second philosopher I said would agree with the concept of homeschooling is our favorite, Rousseau. And Rousseau said, "On the good constitution of the mothers depends that of the children, and the early education of men is in their hands." So even though Rousseau was very far back in time, I think that he would actually agree with homeschooling because he did firmly believe that the sole responsibility of the upbringing of children was the responsibility of the mother. Rousseau touched upon the idea of being in the state of nature, and for Rousseau, he believed that for children to be in the state of nature, it was the sole responsibility of the woman to bring them into the state of nature. And Rousseau also believed that society was a harmful factor towards the education of children, which is why I think that he would be a big proponent for homeschooling, because with homeschooling, the parents are able to dictate the curriculum. So society would have no say in what that child is learning, which I think Rousseau would agree with. And he would agree that it is best for the mother to teach and raise the child until they are able to make decisions on their own when they are finally in the state of nature. Also, many families through homeschooling can teach the way that they want to with their own teaching style. So, for example, we touched a little bit upon this with Montessori. So, with homeschooling, if a mother preferred the Montessori method, she would be able to implement it at home, rather that is not an option in public schools. So many families are able to design their homeschooling to be led by the child's curiosity, which can mirror the state of nature. So I think Rousseau would agree with homeschooling, because with homeschooling, the children would be able to learn through their curiosity, which would lead them to the state of nature. Ultimately, I came to the conclusion that both John Locke and Rousseau would agree with this new norm of homeschooling instead of returning to public education, because, as I said, John Locke would be a big proponent for the fact that the parents would have full rights to their children's education, and Rousseau because it could be the mother bringing up their children and teaching them the way that they want to, so she'd be able to teach them by leading with their curiosity. These are my references, so thank you very much for listening, and I will see everyone soon in class.